Well, morning, guys. It's a real pleasure just to have a standalone slot to pick something that I think God wants to speak into our church this morning. And that is on the subject of rest. Rest as an antidote to busyness, hecticness, non-stopness. We live in a world of crowded schedules, busy to-do lists, full diaries. We are incredibly time poor as people. And what gets pushed to the fringes a lot of the time is our rest, our ability to rest. But I want to perhaps this morning challenge our definition of rest, not as the absence of doing, but more being able to do life and still at the same time live in a place of rest, of rhythm, of not having our lives dictated to us, but rather living for a different king, a different kingdom, and therefore a different pace altogether. And this, I believe, is possible. This is what I believe is the calling that Jesus gives each of us in following him, in trusting him. So it's there for us. I really believe that. And so we're in Psalm 62 this morning. Psalm 62, which is an incredible psalm of faithfulness from a man, King David, who currently is being hunted and potentially facing assassination sort of every single day. We've got Saul's family on the prowl looking to take him off the throne. So my question this morning is, how do we rest when people are trying to kill us? Now, I'm really hoping that your experience of life right now is not that extreme. But it still may feel like a lot of things are crowding in around you. You don't know where to look. You think, if I drop the ball here, that's going to get me. If I drop the ball here, that's going to get me. And therefore, you've got 100 plates spinning and you definitely aren't feeling any sort of sense of rest. So let's get into the psalm, pull it apart together. I'm just going to work our way through it in the hope that we can find some real gems to hold on to and to find rest because of. So first of all, rest requires faith. And this is verses 1 to 4. Rest requires faith. David says in Psalm 62, verse 1, "My soul finds rest in God alone. My salvation comes from him." God is my rest, says David. When I don't know what to do, when the anxiety, the fear, the pace, when it's all got too much, there is only one place I can go. It is God himself. And that's how David starts this psalm. But as we've said, rest is not the absence of doing. Rest is a person. It is a relationship. It is a connection with God, our Father, who loves us, who longs to slow us down. It is in meeting with him that we find rest. If you imagine busyness like choppy storms, things are raging around us. We all know how that feels, right? And everywhere you look, it just feels like there's danger. Or another wave hits us and another wave hits us and we feel like this is endless. When's this going to stop? In the Bible, the disciples had an experience like this. They're in a boat out on Lake Galilee and they're fishing. And as they're out on the lake, the storms start sort of overwhelming the boat. Actually, I don't think they're fishing. I think they're just trying to cross it. But the storms start overwhelming the boat. And at this point, Jesus is asleep in the back of the boat. And they're looking around just like, this is chaos. If this gets any worse, this boat is going to sink. And so they run and they wake Jesus up. And they say, "Jesus, don't you care if we drown?" And Jesus says, "Hey, chill." And he gets up and he says, "Be still. Be calm." And as he speaks that to the waters, they are still and they calm. And Jesus says, "Oh, you of your little faith." And what he's saying here is, I was always in the boat. I was never going to let it drown. You're okay. Because your safety is not this boat. Your safety is me. Your rest, your peace in this storm is not this boat. It is me. Put your faith in me, not this thing that you're in. And what we see at the end of all things in Revelation is Jesus on the throne, ruling over all renewed creation. And the sea is around his throne, but the sea is not choppy. It is so calm that it looks like glass. This is the kind of rest and peace which is on offer in the person of Jesus himself. But this rest requires faith. Not faith in the systems that we're in, not faith in the systems that we put in place, not faith in the coping mechanisms or the control we're trying to wield over whatever feels like a storm around us, but faith in the person of Jesus himself. Or as David says, my soul finds rest in God alone. And as we put our faith in him, we see him calm the storm to a point one day where it will look like glass. And that's what Jesus wants to do for each of us. But let's be real. We find it really hard often to connect in with Jesus, especially when we're busy, because when we're busy, we squeeze out any sort of sense of checking in with ourselves, seeing how we're doing. We're not like, oh yeah, I wonder how I'm doing right now. We're like, I just need to keep going. We get we get a bit emotionally blunt. We're not really able to connect in with ourselves or the people around us. And we become a bit numb in that sense, because that's the only way we can keep going. Because actually, if we get really busy, we're almost self-harming, and we don't want to admit to that. So we just keep going, and that makes it very, very difficult to connect in with God. So just a couple of thoughts, a couple of things that might get in the way of us being able to extend that faith and just draw into that connection with Jesus that he offers us. The first is this: it's pride. Pride says, I can do this and I don't need any help. And then it sort of spirals from there. So it could be, I am what I do, therefore I need to keep doing this in order to keep being who I am. Or everyone else around me is busy, I want, and they seem important because of it, I want to appear important, therefore I'm going to do more stuff as well. But all of this is ultimately pride. It's trying to sort of glorify ourselves, build ourselves up, be enough on our own. Say to God, I don't need you, I can do this myself. And what pride does is it instantly puts up a barrier between us and God. We are doing it ourselves. We're holding out a hand saying, I don't need you. I've got this covered myself. Now, I was praying recently, and God gave me a picture which I'd love to share with you. See, in it, I was there and sitting at a table, and I was doing some woodwork. I was trying to create something. And as I'm doing this woodwork, Jesus is standing behind me. And he said to me, Sam, and I said, yeah, hang on a minute, Jesus, I'm just finishing this. And he said, Sam, and I said, yeah, hang on, Jesus, I'm just finishing this. And I see in this picture, he waits for a moment, he smiles, he says, Sam. I said, yeah, Jesus, I'll be with you. I promise I'll be with you in just a second. I'm just finishing this. And then Jesus in this picture, he walked over to me. He put his hands on my shoulders and just sort of gently lowered his voice. And he said to me, Sam, who's the master carpenter? And at this, something in me just fell away. And I breathed out and I thought, why am I stressing about getting stuff done that actually you're much better at than me. Like, you can manage my life so much better than me. You are the Lord of life. Of course you can deal with the things that I'm feeling stressed about and anxious about. Of course you can sort the people out around, in my life who I'm worried about, or, I can hand all of this to you. I can trust it to you because you're so much better at it than me. And so in the picture, I answered, I said, actually, Jesus, it's you, isn't it? And I'm really sorry for trying to be, the carpenter when you're the master carpenter. And actually, there is this sense of Jesus saying, well, I love it. I love you, having a go and creating stuff. Just trust that I'm always going to bring the best finish. Like, you have a go, and then I'll, make sure it sort of all fits together and it works and it looks great. I can do all that, Sam. And so there's this partnership involved. He doesn't mind us having a go at the carpentry, but he says, just remember who the master carpenter is. Remember who applies the beautiful finish. And remember who makes everything fit together so it works and functions as it's created to. Remember that. And I just left my time with God that morning just feeling so different, like lighter. And just like, do you know what? God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for thinking this was on me. It's not on me. It's you. And so just allowing that pride to slip away and out of my life, as I said, sorry, and receiving that grace and connection with Jesus again. So pride, first of all, can do that. Secondly, shame. Shame can do that. And shame is basically saying, I am not worthy of you, God. It's believing the lie that the enemy tells us, that the world tells us, when it says, you don't look like this, you don't act like this, you haven't been good enough, you haven't done this like you should have. God isn't pleased with you. God is really angry with you. God is frustrated with you. Why can't you just be better? All of these thoughts going through our head. So when it comes to thinking about facing Jesus, we're like, no way. He would never want to see me. Not in a million years would Jesus want anything to do with me. And if you picture yourself with Jesus, you might picture yourself sort of like, with your arms over your head and your head down, and you're hiding away because you're like, no, I don't want to look at him because I know he doesn't want to look at me. That is a lie. That is a lie from the pit of hell. It's not true. If you look up, you will see the eyes of love staring at you, saying, come here, I love you. And if you've done stuff that you feel ashamed of, that you feel genuinely is sin, then you can look up, look into the eyes of love and say, I'm sorry. And Jesus will say, I forgive you. Let's go again. So, number 2, shame separates us often from the ability just to be able to have faith and connect in with God. Last of all, pain. Pain does this as well. And this is us basically saying, God, I am angry with you. Or if I come to you, I'll have to face what I'm currently ignoring. And so pain, first of all, with stuff that's gone on in our lives that we're like, that hurt me. I feel like that's God's fault. And he hasn't been who he said he was. I feel really upset about this. But I don't want to talk to him about it. I'm just going to hold it here. And what that means is we try and continue to live our lives, but we're holding something here that is stopping us from actually connecting in with God. And we know that actually, if we connected in with God, we'd have to face whatever that thing was again in the presence of God, and we are just too scared to do so. And so we get trapped and stuck, holding the pain, not healing, but not meeting God either. It's a really, really tough place to be. Especially when we feel that the pain that we're holding on to, it was not of our own doing, it was not of our own making. But even if it was, it's still tremendously hard to be stuck in that place. So we have pride, shame, and pain as 3 things that can stand in the way of us connecting with God, of sort of releasing our faith in order to meet with him. But this is where rest starts because rest requires faith. That's verses 1 to 4. Let's move into verses 5 to 8. Because what we see here with David is that faith is not a feeling. It's not like, I feel good today, so I trust God. Faith seems to be a choice for him. See, what we have is that people are out to try and get David, okay? He says, how long will you assault a man? Would all of you throw him down this leaning wall, this tottering fence? He's like, I feel so weak. I'm at the end of myself. I haven't got anything left to offer. I really can't do this anymore. And from that place, where he's definitely not feeling faith-filled because these people are coming at him and God seems to be continuing to allow this thing to happen, he finds it in himself to direct himself to God. Notice the change of words. See, in verse 1, he says, my soul finds rest. But in verse 5, he says, find rest, O my soul. He is directing his soul towards God. He's saying, soul, listen to me. Find rest in God. No, we're not looking at that. No, we're not looking at that. Yes, we know about that. Soul, find rest in God. Go to God. I'm telling you now to do this. And sometimes, friends, it is okay to shake ourselves, to say, stop, enough. I'm taking charge. Soul, find rest in God alone. You know, there are some things, friends, that one more night of putting in Netflix is not going to fix. And we can try, as we may, to put it off, to fill our night with something else. I'm not going to pray. I'm not going to Bible study. I'm not going to church. I'm not going to connect in with that friend. I'm not going to do some things that I know could possibly be helpful because I don't want to face this thing. But faith is a choice, and I want to empower you that choice, that you, like David, can say, even in the most desperate situation where people are trying to kill him, find rest, O my soul. Tonight, God, I am coming to you. Tonight, I'm saying no to the distraction. Tonight, God, I'm saying no to whatever it is that I was sort of using to deaden or numb myself before. I am coming to you to find my rest. You have that choice. Faith is a choice. You have a choice in this situation. Next, moving on to verse 8, where David says, pour out your heart to him. See, the next thing in finding rest in God is knowing that rest requires honesty. Rest requires honesty. Now, as I was praying about this, I had a picture of a dam. And I guess earlier we talked about things that block our rest. But this is the moment where David says, if you've got stuff in the way, now is the time to be honest about it. You will not find rest in God if you're not honest with God. You will not find rest in God if you're not honest with God. And you know whether you're being honest with God or not right now in your life. But David says, pour out your heart to him. Let flow the things that are burdening you. The pride, the shame, the pain, the fear, whatever it is, let it flow. And the picture I had is as you let it flow, the dams, the things that have been holding you back come smashing down. And suddenly, the land that has been parched because the dam has been in place is flooded with new life, and things change. Things grow, new life happens, things become green, and fruit is bared, and all of that stuff. And so rest requires honesty. Pour out your heart to him. Even now, you know what it is. God, I believe, is putting his finger on some things in your life right now. He's saying, pour it out to me. Pour it. I want to know it. I want to hear it from your lips so we can begin to work together, so we can bring healing and freedom, because that's what he wants for us. Shalom, wholeness, us being rebuilt in exactly the way he intended us to be. And then we move on to verses 9 and 10, where we see a bit like rest requiring faith, and faith is a choice. Well, rest requires honesty, and honesty is a choice. See, David lays it out for us. He holds nothing back. He's well aware, I think, because of his precarious situation, that actually we're all on the same plane here. He says, low-born men are but a breath, high-born but a lie. In other words, it doesn't matter if you're rich or you're poor. We're all people and we all stand before God in the same manner. And we are all like a blip in the scheme of, the story of the earth so far, and in the story of eternity. We're very small on that. And David's just reminding us, like, we are a breath, here today, gone tomorrow. It's a very humbling moment. Doesn't matter who you are. We're all in the same boat. And he says that actually in this breath of a life, we can choose, if we want, to be dishonest and put our faith in dishonest gain and dishonest means and dishonesty. And you may not feel that you are currently fixing weighing scales in order to make yourself a few extra shekels, but we have a culture that is really dishonest with itself. And we do put our faith in dishonesty. Just think for a moment of our social media presence. Think of what we try and make others think of us through our pictures, through what we post, through what we retweet, to what we rally against. All of it is self-creation. All of it is trying to make people think we're something, which might be partly true, but actually it's a dishonest picture of who we are. It's not a full picture of who we are. And really, we do that as well because we are trying to not look at the things we don't like about ourselves. We have so many people, I meet them a lot, who try to paint this picture of who we are. Like, this is who I am, and this is what I do, and this is what I'm like. But I'm like, I don't believe you. Underneath it, I don't think you really like yourself. Or you've got bits of yourself that you're not in touch with at all because they're too painful, or you're too ashamed of them, or you don't want to go there. But you'd never, ever see any of that on your Instagram. But David says, don't put your faith in all of that stuff. You have a choice instead to be honest, to pour out yourself to God. Here's me, God, warts and all, brokenness and all, pain and all, pride and all, shame and all. This is me, all of me. And I pour it out at your feet. Because, friends, there is no rest anywhere else. And there is certainly no rest in self-creation. The only rest you will truly find is in Jesus. Because, final point, rest is a person, verses 11 and 12. David meets with God. And as he meets with God, and I love this, every time I read it, I love it, because he says, one thing you have spoken, but two things have I heard. How does that work? How can you say one thing, but hear two things? What does that mean? I've had encounters with God where I have met with him, and he hasn't really even had to say anything other than sort of, here I am. And in that moment, I'm like, wow. You are loving, you are gracious, you are merciful, you are kind, you are beautiful, you are holy, you have forgiven me, you are incredible. The list is endless. For me, it'd be like, one thing you have spoken, but 95 things have I heard, because just who he is speaks endless words that, some of them we can't even express with human language. They're so incredible. Because he is so incredible. But what I love is the two things that David hears, because they are the two things we need to believe about God in order to find rest in him. David said, I have heard that you, O God, are strong, and that you, O God, are loving. In other words, because you are loving, I am yours. And because you are strong, you can achieve the things in my life that you need to achieve. So I am loved, and I am safe, secure, cared for, and you are capable. And because of that, we can rest in God. He says, I love you and I've got this. I love you and I've got this. And that is where we find rest. That's why Jesus says in the Gospel of Matthew, he says, hey, come to me. Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden. I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and in me you will find rest for your souls. Rest is a person. Jesus says, come to me. He doesn't say, try this mindfulness CD. Try this Merlot. Try this relationship. Try this job. Try this social platform. There's no rest there. No. He says, come to me. Rest in me. So Groves Church, today, let our souls find rest in God alone, for our salvation comes from him.